College of Business here. Really enjoyed the presentations this morning, particularly Professor Jagdish Sheth and the other gentlemen. Sorry, don't remember your name. But the presentation was excellent. My question has to do with the role of both the Indian as well as the Chinese diaspora throughout the world in whether the governance mechanisms or just change and how to position these economies on the road. And I have to say, I'm going to provide a couple of quick examples. One is I'm reading this book called Cold Steel, and it's a story of how Lakshmi Nivas Mittal basically acquired Arcelor and now is heading up ArcelorMittal, the largest steel company in the world. And he is an example of the Indian diaspora. He's no longer based in India. There was almost a parting of ways with his own Indian family back in India, but he's based in Luxembourg. And so that's one big example. And the other, I'd like to quote Professor Jagdish Sheth. I happen to be in July speaking at the Institute of International Auditors conference in Kuala Lumpur, and at every corner in the city of Kuala Lumpur, I find Professor Sheth's picture saying Shinhei Rising. He's coming here on July 25th. So I think Professor Sheth is playing a big role in terms of being part of this Indian diaspora. So I'd like for you to comment on the roles that both the Chinese and the Indian diaspora will play in what's emerging.
No, I think the diaspora concept surprisingly is contemporarized. It has been always there historically. There always were diasporas, which means a person of a given origin traveling all over the world and having a network of support in some fashion through trade, through culture, whatever it is. But it is getting very much contemporarized now to the level, for example, the State Department of US is very, very serious about alignment with India. I don't think India is that serious about America, I must tell you that. They are hedging their bets. But US, I think, out of sheer necessity, has to counterbalance other powers to align with India. Strategic alignment, military has taken place. Now the State Department actually is encouraging the Indian diaspora to create more alignment with India. This is very interesting. It is not the Indian diaspora who is going to the American government and say, help us. It's the State Department right now having a whole ambassadorial approach to using Indian diaspora to create a much greater bilateral understanding between these two nations. For example, you have the US-India Business Council, now they've started US-India Education Council. Absolutely incredible. But it is the diaspora they're leveraging. I think at the Assistant Secretary of State level, there is now a point person of Indian origin, very young man. I met him in Washington, and he is actually asked to go out and motivate Indian diaspora to talk positively about America and its role in the Indian future economy, still Indian in general. Same thing, you will hear a lot more mainstream, everything about India in this country will be positive. Well, that's not the case. As again, it's the same thing, which optics you take. India still has roaming cows on the street. There are snake charmers, but they are getting less and less. The snake charmers are there, but the snakes are moving over now. It's kind of funny. It's very interesting. There is no question. I mean, it's happening. The country that's leveraging the Indian diaspora for its own future is Singapore. I'm right now doing the repositioning of Singapore, second time now in 20 years. Singapore now will be like a small bird. It's the most strategic city rising, like Vienna in Cold War that happened. It'll be like a small bird flying in the sky, unlimited potential on the two wings of China and India. Wings have to be equal. Chinese wing is very strong. So they're going out of their way to make Indian wing strong by making the deputy prime minister who is of Indian origin, Singaporean but Indian origin. Okay? They're having a massive impact diaspora. They're motivating Indian corporations like Tata, several groups, to headquarter now in Singapore, not in their own country. It's absolutely mind-boggling how some nations know how to leverage a diaspora. That's very interesting. So I think you are right that Chinese diaspora is equally very important to understand and how it can be useful actually. Ultimately, the goal is that we need to create a harmony among these three nations rather than any kind of a conflict, because, and my worry is that if there is any major war, it will not happen in Europe anymore. The United States of Europe is pacified. Won't happen in Latin America, not even Middle East, surprisingly, or it will be contained. But if there is a major war, it's happening in Asia, and it will get out of hand, and that will be the most destructive in the world. My view is that the only way out is not politicians or governance, it is economic interdependence. If I attack you, I get more hurt than you do. That slows me down. Everybody takes taste, so you must be dumb to do it. To me, that's the governance mechanism that I see as totally different.
So, it's interesting, the diaspora question is clearly a very interesting point. I think has been key to both the Indian community and Chinese community, and maybe in different ways. I mean, even in this group right here, we have essentially diaspora, in a sense, are bridge builders. They're able to facilitate trade and investment across continents. I recently finished a book by Emerald talking about Chinese returnees, and it's just been published, just came out in the press. And what we found out that many of the Chinese that were educated in the West or have had a successful career in the West are now returning to China to build new businesses and to build new business models. The interesting thing to note about them is that they have been an important part, an integral part of the Chinese economic development. We did a book before that by Edward Elgar about Chinese entrepreneurs and business leaders, which were mostly domestic Chinese entrepreneurs. And then we did a few papers comparing domestic and returnee entrepreneurs. And what we found out, that both are very successful, but on a different base. The domestic entrepreneur is successful on the basis of their guanxi, their relationship to certain industries and to certain friends and to certain bases of power, whereas the returnees were successful on the basis of the new knowledge that they brought into the economy. And it's a very different model. I suspect that as Chinese and Indian companies are now looking to globalize their operation, this is the frontier now that we're talking about, the globalization of emerging markets, economies, and businesses. They're going to have to rely on their diaspora network to help them develop those contacts in new countries and be successful and act accordingly.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Sheth and Dr. Ilan. And the festivities do continue, so stay with us.